Monster Girl.
Aw, look at her, she's adorable. But isn't there like an age requirement for this ride?
In this video, we'll tell you everything that happens to Monster Girl in the Invincible comics. Before we begin though, there are major spoilers ahead. You have been warned. When Beauty became the Beast. Monster Girl isn't like the titular hero of the Invincible series. She wasn't born with innate abilities. There wasn't a sci-fi experiment she'd gone through, and she's definitely not the child of some superpowered imperialist. Instead, her story starts back when she was just a teenager. Back then, she was a normal teenage girl named Amanda. For all intents and purposes, there wasn't really anything too out of the ordinary for her. Amanda was born into a well-to-do human family. She was bright, albeit a little bit rambunctious, and she was enrolled in a posh all-girls school. Everything was going great for Amanda. That is until her senior year, when she went on a school trip to Europe. During this excursion, Amanda fell in love with a Romani boy about the same age as her. It was a whirlwind romance that was over as soon as it started, and by the time it ended, Amanda would never be the same again. You see, her little Romanian boyfriend had a rather, well, let's just say quote-unquote strict grandmother, and the old lady didn't approve of her boy going out with some Yankee Doodle dandy. She forbade the two from continuing their relationship, but Amanda and the boy didn't listen. One day, Grandma caught them making the beast with two backs, which enraged the old lady, so she decided to place a curse on Amanda. It then went on just like most other instances of puppy love. Amanda and the boy broke up when their European trip was over. Now, Amanda didn't really think much of Grandma's curse at first, but she started to take it seriously, and we mean way more seriously, when she started to transform into a grotesque ogre-like creature while on her flight home. She was initially shocked with what happened to her, but ultimately accepted the fact that she's no longer your average human. And being the bright girl that she is, Amanda understood that if you have lemons, you might as well make lemonade, and if you have the power to transform into a superpowered monster, you can be a superhero. And so Amanda did just that. She started working as a local superhero in her neighborhood for months until the day came when she finally realized the true curse within this otherwise awesome ability. Amanda started to notice that she's physically de-aging every time she transforms. After just a year of being an independent vigilante, Monster Girl's body is de-aged to the point that her body reverted to that of a preteen girl. Monster Girl gets drafted to the big leagues. Monster Girl would eventually find herself recruited by Earth's premier superhero team, the Guardians of the Globe. There, she'd meet and ultimately form a romantic relationship with fellow Guardian, Robot, who's actually revealed to be a human genius named Rudy. Now, this is one of the biggest turning points in Monster Girl's life, as Robot would take it upon himself to help Amanda, who's now a girl in her late 20s trapped in the body of a 13-year-old. Robot is committed to find a way to reverse or at least halt the de-aging process that her monstrous transformation causes. It would take Robot a couple of tries, but he'd ultimately succeed in this endeavor as he managed to invent a belt that helped nullify the side effects of Amanda's transformations. Simply put, wearing it would grant Monster Girl the ability to transform into her beast self at will without de-aging. Monster Girl Marooned. Monster Girl and Robot would continue their duties as part of the Guardians of the Globe. Eventually, a catastrophic event called the Invincible War occurs, in which evil versions of Mark Grayson from other dimensions basically decimate Earth. The Guardians would ultimately prevail, or at the very least survive in this war, but it came at a hefty price. Most of the world's largest cities had been decimated, tens of thousands of innocent people had died, and fellow Guardians of the Globe Rex Splode ended up sacrificing himself to save the rest of the team. This planted a seed in both Monster Girl and Robot's minds that they have to become more powerful, become better superheroes to defend the world. But their plans would be put on hold when an extra-dimensional race called the flaxans tried to invade Earth. The Guardians of the Globe would ultimately fend off the would-be conquerors, but Monster Girl and Robot would find themselves trapped on the flaxans' homeworld when they accidentally went through a portal that led there while fighting the invaders. Monster Girl becomes a monarch. Monster Girl and Robot would spend a long time in the flaxan dimension, hundreds of years to be precise, since time moved much faster there. And it basically made Monster Girl and Robot seem near immortal to the native flaxans. But the two weren't treated like gods in spite of this, at least not right away. You see, Monster Girl and Robot first became slaves to the flaxan nobility when they first got there. She'd even find herself as a gladiator within the world's fighting pits. However, Monster Girl and Robot would mount a rebellion against the flaxan ruling class, and after a few attempts, thanks mostly to how slow they age in this dimension, they'd end up overthrowing the flaxan nobility and become the new monarchs of the world themselves. In fact, the getting was so good that Amanda finally managed to properly age and possess the body of a woman in her physical prime. The same could be said for Robot, who became sort of a hunk during their long stay with the flaxan dimension too. Now it all seems like a happy turn of events, but little did Monster Girl know that this was just the beginning of the new world of problems. As the new monarchs of the flaxans, Robot became mostly in charge of ruling the empire. This caused his and Amanda's relationship to drift apart and eventually sour. Monster Girl versus Robot. Monster Girl would find herself becoming well acquainted with the old flaxan ruling class, who had basically become the new lower class citizens of this world after she and Robot overthrew them. Ultimately, Amanda would become sympathetic to how Robot's new regime treated the old nobility. Hell, she'd even fall in love with one of them, a female flaxan, and they'd usually get jiggy with each other by having Amanda turn into her monster form, which has male parts. Go Monster Girl. In the end, Amanda decided to lead this group in a rebellion against her former lover's rule. This new insurgence was a success too, as Monster Girl and her newfound allies managed to overthrow Robot's regime and imprison him. But here's the kicker: it turns out the old nobility were just using Monster Girl. As soon as they came back into power, they started killing off anyone who opposed them and went back to their extra-dimensional war of conquest too. Realizing that she made a grave mistake, Monster Girl decided to free Robot and they retook the power back from the old flaxan nobility. But at this point, their relationship had become too strained and there was no romantic reconciliation to be had. Plus, Robot even realized that this whole deal with the flaxans would just be an endless series of power struggles, so he ultimately decided to just say, "Screw this place, I'm going home." Monster Girl came back with him to Earth and they discovered that the 700 years they spent in the flaxan dimension was just equivalent to a few months' time in their own dimension. Monster Mom. Amanda and Robot would return to their posts as part of Guardians of the Globe. It was business as usual until a few months later when the flaxans returned to Earth to attempt another takeover. The aliens came prepared this time around too, as their emperor led the charge and easily dispatched the other Guardians of the Globe without a sweat. Monster Girl would face off against this powerful alien and during their bout discovered that this flaxan didn't look like the others. This flaxan emperor looked eerily similar to Amanda's monster form. And hey, remember earlier when we told you about how Monster Girl fell in love with a flaxan woman? Yeah, their relationship bore a son, and it's this emperor, Monax. The revelation that she had a son ultimately led to Amanda leaving herself open and getting knocked out by Monax. But before the half flaxan, half monster emperor could deal the final blow, Robot swooped in and subdued Monax. Monster Girl and Robot together again. With Monax incapacitated, Robot took the few moments that he had and reconciled with his ex. Monster Girl would accept his apologies and they'd fight Monax after he freed himself from his constraints. Eventually, Monax's duel with his mom and Robot was just long enough for the other Guardians of the Globe to recover and thwart the flaxan forces wreaking havoc on Earth. After a drawn-out battle, Monster Girl would manage to get the better of her kid and put an end to the flaxan attempt invasion altogether. In the end, Monster Girl and Robot would get back together and rekindle their relationship. They became lovers and once more, just as they started, continued guarding the globe. And they lived happily ever after. Well, not really. Monster Girl ends things with Robot. For real this time. His experiences dealing with rebellions, ruling, alien invasions, and everything in between left Robot changed. He started to believe that he should be the one ruling the world to properly protect it and bring everlasting peace on Earth. He tried to convince Monster Girl into becoming Earth's supreme leader by any means necessary, killing both friends and foes alike, but she'd refuse. This would cause a more permanent rift between the two's relationship, and they'd break up for good this time. Robot would then successfully fulfill his plan of taking over Earth, and it would take the combined effort of the world's remaining superheroes, Monster Girl included, to put a stop to his reign. Monster Girl, Invincible, and all the others who stood up to Robot would prevail, and the Genius X superhero would literally become a sentient brain in a vat when all is said and done. Locked away deep within the Pentagon, Monster Girl, who at this point is still an active member of the Guardians of the Globe, even years after Robot's heel turn, would one day pay a visit to the room where the Global Defense Agency is keeping Robot's living brain to provide her routine report to the Immortal, the leader of the Guardians. Monster Girl was just about to leave the room after the brief meeting when Robot's brain spoke to her, an attempt at rekindling their relationship, but Amanda has matured over the years, so she simply leaves that old flame, that old life, behind.